What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this one we're going to be going across the basics that I think are needed for building dioramas, and also why I feel like they are so important for this whole hobby sphere that we're in, whether it's bolt action, Malifaux, Battletech, whatever you are into. I feel like building dioramas can help you in a grand scheme of different reasons, from terrain building to model painting and just getting really good basing ideas.
So something that may be able to help you that you can buy straight off the shelf, or in my case straight out of Amazon. It's this box by the Army Painter. Now they do several different types of these box, and I've gone with the Dungeons and Caverns one because I feel like it includes the most stuff. So the main things that we want to look at in this is that it's got tufts for basing afterwards, and it's got some XPS foam safe spray for getting your basing needs down, I suppose. And also something that I find really helpful is it comes with a foam cutter that doesn't have to be set up and use your entire building area, so it's a nice handheld device here. And then once we've got through this lovely little device here, it's got some basing sand. I've had one of these kits before, and let's just face it, I don't use it. I don't know what it is. I don't like the grit sizes that it all comes with it, so can't quite put my finger on it. There's just something I don't like about that sand. Anyway, once we're out of looking at this lovely sand, which can be flushed away, it also comes with a razor knife or a box cutter or Stanley style blade, as you might want to call it, some brushes that you'll need, a painting palette for mixing up paints or creating your washes. And to that effect, look at that! It's got loads of paints in it as well. I can't get over how useful this box is. It comes with so much stuff. These are all, of course, Army Painter paints, which have just been renamed to things like Cavern Effect and Dungeon Effect. So, you know, someone got real creative with the naming of these. It's also got some PVA safe, foam safe glue. Most PVA glue is foam safe, so don't know why I wanted to include that. I mean, if you really want to use just any old sort of PVA glue, just get yourself some Mod Podge. It does absolutely everything. And then from there, we've also got some foam boards. It comes with loads of these, which is a really good amount to start with. And then we've got a steel rule. It's not a ruler, it's a steel rule. It's the rule of steel. And then we've got some sandpaper. Now, these are all fantastic items that I think are fantastic for anybody just getting started off within this hobby and doing diorama buildings or terrain building and just basing your models. This is completely unsponsored, so buy one of these kits, don't buy one of these kits. It doesn't affect me or whatsoever. It's just a helpful little thing that I thought you might not have thought about looking into. So one thing that didn't come in this box, which I think really should have, is MDF board. And you can get those from most places, like any sort of hobby shop or DIY store. And we're going to start our diorama from that as a nice sturdy base to have it on. And with zero thought and planning, I'm just going to use my Dremel tool to cut out a random shape. You can use a knife to get the same effect. I'm just doing it quickly with my Dremel. So once we've got our shape all cut out with our Dremel, of course, if you're me, using completely the wrong cutting bit. So a little bit of tidy up is going to be needed to make it all look a lot flusher and a lot neater for the finished product. So I'm going to be using that box cutter knife just to neaten up the edges, get a lot of that excess material off, and then going over it with the sandpaper, which is 120 grit, which I forgot to mention earlier. So it's quite a high grit paper, which will help smooth down these edges. You can then use sort of go up to like maybe like a 380 grit or maybe higher after that if you want to get a real fine finish on this, but I think just using the 120 grit paper, it's a pretty good round number, which I'm quite glad they've given me some more because I've actually run out of my supply. Once we've done that, we're going to be going on and gluing some foam down onto this bit of MDF. So we're going to get our glue, we're going to put some baking sort of tray paper, baking grease-proof paper, that's the words. We're going to put some of that down, and then add the glue to our MDF, and then put the foam board on top, and then add some serious weight so it all dries nice and flat, and we know we've got good coverage on that glue. Putting the grease paper down so that we don't accidentally glue it to our table, and that means it will peel off later if we have got any overspill on the glue. So once our glue has dried, what I'm going to be doing is just taking the foam cutter that's come in this box. I've added a little bit of green stuff to the copper or brass or whatever it is to complete the circuit on it, which just press the metal to the metal, and it just feels weird adding me into that live circuit, so I've just added a slight barrier there. It's probably perfectly safe, but you know, best to be cautious. I know what I'm like. So this cuts round really nicely. It keeps to the form of the MDF that I've cut, and it's also making light work of the glue that has overspilled and pushed out the sides. Once I've done that, I'm going to then use the foam cutter and the knife to sort of cut the edges up and create a random jagged edging to this to sort of make it look a lot more natural and less unnatural and man-made. So the next thing that we want to be doing is taking all our offcuts now and reusing them, having a little decide where do we want to take this diorama. So I'm going to have a look at what offcuts I've got, mix and match them round, and try and make some terrain and terraforming effects out of them, because later we're going to be using some sculptor mold, something that's not in the box but a really good tool to have. So for the process, I'm just going to use some toothpicks, pin them down, and I'm going to be messing them up with the foam cutter, a knife, some sandpaper, and really trying to get rid of the manufactured effect to give it more of a natural, rocky, floor, terrainy, you know, sort of look and feel to them, so they don't look unnatural. So I'm going to finish off this step by using the gravel that comes within this kit, and that's mostly just so I can get rid of it. So it's just too many different sizes. That's why I'm going to really sort of put it down and have it underneath the base paint later on. So it's more adding to the texture and creating that than it is as an actual scene natural look on top. And I'm going to be gluing that down with a mixture of PVA, water, and isopropyl alcohol, which I've just sort of made to sort of get a nice consistency where it flows really well and it gets in amongst all the little rocks and all the crevices and really locks it down tight. So to move on to probably the last steps of forming our terrain here is going to be adding some sculptor mold. So to do this, what you want to do is get yourself a bowl, preferably a plastic one because it can be easily washed. Try not to use your mum and dad's best china or the missus or wife's, because you will not hear the end of any of that if you do that. And then whilst mixing it together, I tend to just sort of go by eye and feel. What I do is I throw what I reckon about a handful and a bit into the bowl, and then I keep adding water till everything's sort of clumped up, and then I add a little bit more just to give it that nice spongy feel and to stop it drying out too quickly. And then once we've done that, I'm going to add it into our terrain and onto our diorama to fill in the blanks of where more terrain should be. So again, helping this to look less manufactured and more natural in the effect. Do you see the theme I'm going for here is to sort of take the machine-made items and make them look not machine-made. It really should just boil down to that, I suppose. Wow, this video's been going a long time to come to that revelation. But we've still got some more to go, so yeah, keep going with us. Give me a chance, you know. And a nice little tip for sculptor mold is, once it's all down, just moisten your fingers and rub over any areas that you feel are uneven, and that will flatten them out. And then I wouldn't suggest putting any dioramas in your oven, but I was running out of time and I needed this to dry, so into the oven it went. So just remember to place your diorama into the oven, set it to 150 for 45 minutes and leave to bake. Now that we've let our diorama cool down, it's now ready for serving. I mean sanding. So we're going to give it a nice sand all over and try and get rid of any ridges that might still be visible, and also try and smoothen out some of the areas where the sculptor mold hasn't quite sort of done what we wanted. So we're going to hit it with the sandpaper and go all over with some 400 grit, and then go down to our 120 grit just for a bit of final roughness to it. So we're going to smooth it out to get rid of any edges, and then we're going to rough it up a bit, again trying to make it keep it with the whole unnatural look. Once that's all done and we've got it to a smoothness and a roughness that we like, and we're feeling, yeah, I think now it's time for some paint. We're going to get our spray paints out, and we're going to hit it with this dark burnt umber sort of brown, and I'm also going to hit it with another paint that I've got from a similar kit of this, which is a sort of light ochre colour. So I'm going to put that in what looks like what I initially thought would be like a footpath, but now I'm sort of thinking, ooh, that could be a riverbed. So this diorama is slowly starting to evolve from step to step. Still don't really know what I'm building yet, but hey, we're getting there. And once I was done putting on this ochre colour, I went in with the burnt umber once again and sort of blended it in a little bit, made it look less sort of vibrant and radioactive on the paint side of things. So now that we've got what's actually starting to look like a diorama, and that is a basic bit of terrain. So we should probably start thinking about what models I want to go onto this base that we've created. And I've actually found an in-stock box of Kazakin. Oh my god, thought I'd never find them. And I'm going to throw some orcs on, as I built this in October and obviously releasing it in November. My schedule's pretty full at the moment, so anyway, I'm going to sort of look at maybe doing a bigger lore video on Kazakin in the future. If you want to sort of see that video or have me build something else with Kazakin, let me know in the comments below, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on that one. So anyway, we're going to blast through building these models up and then get back on to building up the diorama and getting into the finishing touches and final stages of this build. So once I've pried this terrain bit off of the cardboard that I spray painted on, I'm going to move on to new bit of cardboard after giving it a bit of a clean up, because I went a bit overzealous with the spray paints and it's glued itself down. So you know, these things happen, it's fine. But the main thing to remember now is that there is no wrong way to do this next step. There is no adding too much paint or not enough paint. This part is exactly how you want it to be, because I now know that central part is going to be a riverbed, and we can have gloss paint remaining, we can have matted paint, satined paint. It doesn't matter what types of paints we're going to use now, because having it around a riverbank, it's going to be saturated with water, and there's going to be different types of mud. You're going to have fine silt, you're going to have gritty, sort of dirty muds, you're going to have clean, wet mud, which is just absorbing everything that falls into it. So for this step, we're just going to go crazy, do some dry brushing, wet blending, throwing washes and contrast paints all over the place in a little bit of a frenzy, slightly controlled manner, but definitely in a bit of a frenzy. So let's get on and smash that out. So now that we have some sort of diorama terrain soup, just going to leave this to one side to dry. And while that's going on, it's the perfect time to start painting up the models to go onto this diorama build. And with me finding a box of Kazakin in stock, which I was absolutely amazed about, I'm going to add one of those. I'm going to paint one of them up and get him on with some orcs that you can see himself painting up right here. So we won't be going into the lore on this video. I'm going to save that for its own specific video, where I'm going to sort of go a bit more in depth and really sort of look at the Kazakin of the Astra Militarum and Cadia. So put that to one side for the moment. What I will be doing in the future is sort of showing how you can then take this diorama to the next steps and start adding sort of things like LEDs, maybe some sound effects. I've had some really cool ideas of what we could do, and thought I'll probably try and wrap that into a tutorial before just start building them, pumping out lore, and then people going, how did you do that? So that's the main base of this, is so that when everyone says, how do you sort of build a basic one, I can go watch this video, and if you want some more advanced what sort of techniques, we'll be looking at that at some point in the near future. And now that it's all dried, we can start finishing up our diorama and get that final look on the go. So what we're going to be doing is using grass tufts initially to sort of hide and disguise any sort of little blemishes or mistakes that we want to do. So some of them will be tactically placed and some of them will be randomly placed, just to sort of give that feel like, oh, it should be here. I'm going to also add a little purple one at the top, just for a spot of colour, I suppose you could say. Then I'm going to be using my PVA mix that I've told you about earlier, with the isopropyl alcohol and water all mixed in to fit it right down. And we're going to be adding a load of different ground effects. So lots of gravel is the word. And then covering on top with some grass flocks. So make sure this is all nicely mixed together. This isn't going to be the final step yet, but we're just going to lock it down once again with another sort of pouring of that glue, and then once it's all dried, give it a quick flip and a tip to sort of knock off any extras. So for these final steps that we are going to be doing now, we're going to be looking at the model placement and where we feel it looks best and the most compelling to tell a story upon this bit of terrain that we've built. This is where it goes from terrain to diorama, adding the models, and this is always such a really satisfying part of the build. It's really when it's sort of, you know, it's all coming together. To do this, what I usually do is bit of super glue and I lock them down onto the board. And if I'm doing any water effects where I feel like the models are going to be in the water, which I'll show you in a moment, I will now add the resin. Now this is just Vallejo's still water effect resin, and because I wasn't planning on this being a resin, having any resin poured onto it, it didn't exactly go to plan, so it all sort of like ran off the side a little bit, but it's fine. With a little bit of perseverance, we did manage to fix this later on, and it hasn't affected the overall look of the build. Once that has then done, everything has now dried, we're going to be adding one last step, and that is some mud ground effects. We can add that to the bottom of the legs of our models to blend them into the environment, and also if there's any super glue frosting, we can use it to disguise that as well. And once it's done, you will then have a complete diorama, which should hopefully have all the little mistakes hidden. Some still shine through. I'm sure you guys have picked up and noticed the ones that I'm looking at. So, you know, roast me in the comment, but that's pretty much the general way. This is how I build a lot of my basic dioramas. This is where I get my ideas from, and a lot of time my thought process behind putting these builds together. So I hope this has helped in some sort of way, and I will leave you with the glamour shots. And guys, I hope to see you in the next one.